Hey knitters, welcome back to Rena Knits. This week what we're going to be doing is making a mini project based off of the theme of fall as well as Halloween. This is a great project that you could do in an afternoon. You could get the kids involved, you could have a kind of like a family thing happening. It's great fun and it's a way to decorate the house as well as to maybe put it out for Halloween. These are little mini pumpkins that you can make out of any colors. It has a little stem as well as a little leaf. So it's great to work on it. So have fun making these pumpkins and let me know your thoughts. This is the pumpkin that we're going to be making. It is very simple and easy to make. In order to make this pumpkin, the materials we will need are as follows. The materials we need are 3 different colored yarns. So the pumpkin I'm going to now make is orange. Green is the leaf stem, and then this brownish color is going to be the stem of the pumpkin itself. You need scissors, set of needles, a crochet hook, a sewing needle, measuring tape, and stuffing that you're going to stuff the pumpkin with. To begin, you will cast on 20 stitches. You will then knit for 4 rows. So for 4 rows, you're going to knit the whole row. You're going to knit complete rows of 4. Once you have knit 4 rows, the 5th row is going to be all purl. So 4 rows of knits, then the 5th row is all purls. One tip to know when you are knitting this particular part of the pattern: in order to do 4 rows of knit and then 1 row of this, in 1 row of purl needs to come on the wrong side. So when you're doing 4 rows of knit, you will come to the right side. So what I found is to do another row of knit to get to the wrong side. In order for the purl row, in order for the pattern to come such that this is always on this side, you have to purl always from the wrong side. So after the first 4 rows and the 5th row being a knit, first 4 rows being knit and the 5th row being a purl, what you want to do is knit for 5 rows, and then your 6th row will be a purl. What you just want to make sure is that your purl row is on the wrong side, on the side where you don't see this particular stockinette pattern. So here I'm going to purl. So this I'm doing as my 6th row, which is going to be a purl. And once I'm done, I'll show you what I mean. So once I purled on the wrong side, on the right side I got the stockinette style pattern. So that is what you want to do. So after the initial 4 rows of knit and 1 row of purl, you want to do 5 rows of knit with the 6th row being a purl. But you will continue this till this measures 9 inches. Once you have knit that pattern to make this 9 inches, so 9 inches right here, what you now want to do is bind off. And once you get to your last stitch in your bind off, you don't want to cut your yarn too small because you're going to use that to stitch everything together. So at least have about 2 to 3 inches of yarn that you can use to sew your pumpkin, and then fill it up with the stuffing. So you would, after cutting the yarn, put it in a needle. You're going to let it go through this stitch to complete the bind off. Then you're going to fold this in half so it's in reverse, and you are now going to sew all the way along here and all the way along the bottom. So once you've sewn all of this together, you're still not going to cut the yarn, but you're going to open it up so it's this way, and you're going to bring the yarn and the needle to the top. So let's get to that. So now from here, let's sew this together. So just keep going all the way down to the very end. So once you've done the two sides, what you're going to do is open it so it opens up like this. So it opens up like this. So it's kind of like a little mini basket. And this yarn will come, the extra yarn will come up, and you'll need this to close this part off. So now what you're going to do is stuff this with the stuffing. So I'm going to take some stuffing and stuff it in here. Now you could stuff it as much as you want, not too much, but enough so that it makes it more roundish, and this will still be here. And now you're going to end up closing the top. So what you're going to, after you've stuffed it, you're going to take your yarn and needle that you brought from the bottom up and just finish knitting through and closing the top off. So just knit through and close it off. Once you've finished sewing it all together, to make it more round, what you can do is bring this little bit in a little bit, both corners, and sew it to the center. So that way then it has a more round structure to it, a more pumpkin looking structure to it. What we're going to then end up doing is knitting the stem as well as the leaf right here. So it will, this part of it will kind of disappear into that. So you could just bring this closer like this, so that way then it all kind of blends in, and sew it in. So that way then it looks more round. I'm also sewing it around so that way it locks the yarn as well in its place, and my yarn is now a little tiny, so it kind of like locks it into place as well. And then I want to just take it in this way through here and finish it off that way. There we go. So this part we're done. which is the round portion of the pumpkin. Now we're going to add the stem and then the leaf. And I'm going to take this and make it part of the stem, so that way it's more locked in place. So in order to create the stem, we're going to take this yarn, and what I'm going to do is make an I-cord. We are going to take about 10 stitches. So we're going to cast on 10 stitches, and we're going to basically just knit for 2.5 inches. So the stem itself is going to be about 2.5 inches. And then we're going to take our sewing needle and sew it together. So let's cast on 10 stitches and knit for 2.5 inches. So once you've knit your stem to 2.5 inches, as we can see here, it's 2.5 inches. So there's two ways you could knit the stem. You could either do it all knit like that you see it here, or you could do the stockinette pattern, where the right row is knit, the wrong side is purl, and do it for 2.5 inches. So either way you choose. What you will then do is cut off about an inch of yarn. You would cut off an inch of yarn. You would take your sewing needle, put the yarn through, and then you would take all your stitches and go through them. So you would take them through your needle, and you would go through it. So you would take the yarn through all of them, and you would close this. Now, if you're doing the stockinette pattern, make sure that the stockinette pattern is on the side, but the knit pattern doesn't matter. So you would close it this way, and then you will stitch all the way through here, So closing this off. So you would take your needle and just stitch through, like what you did with the pumpkin base with the orange yarn. So you would just stitch through all the way. If you have any extra yarn, like this bit, make sure to put that in here so that it doesn't stick out, and just stitch all the way through. Once you have stitched all the way around, what you would then do is the extra yarn that you got from here, you will use that to knit onto here. So stitch onto here. So I would just go around the whole thing in a circular way. So make sure from all sides the stem comes through, and this way you hide the area where you finished your stitching of the ball. So I'm going just around, taking my stem as well as my pumpkin and knitting through and stitching through. So that way it's covered from all angles and it doesn't fall. It doesn't kind of like fall to any one side. So I would do this a few times and then knot it off and then cut the extra yarn. To make the actual leaf part of your pumpkin, this particular part of your pumpkin, what you're going to actually end up doing is crocheting this part, not knitting. So this one was created by crochet. Now you could also choose to knit, So I'm going to show you both methods on creating this particular stem. To crochet, you would take your yarn and hold it like this. Then you would take your crochet hook. Now I usually hold it as if I'm going to be cutting a cake or something. So I hold it like as if I am using a knife. So you would start off by making a stitch knot. And tightening it. Putting this in your crochet hook and then tightening it to the crochet hook. You don't want to tighten it too much, but enough. I usually leave a little bit of yarn just so that it makes it easier. So then what you would do is just hook it like this and make this go through here and tighten it. And you would do this for 20 stitches. So here in this, and the first one does not count. So you have one, I have 1, 2 stitches so far. So three, 4, 5, 6, and you would continue till you get 20 of these. Once you have 20 stitches from your cross stitching, what you're going to do, your second row, what you're going to do is every second stitch you're going to do a cross stitch. So every second stitch you're going to cross stitch together. So 2, so this is basically your second row when you're cross stitching, and you're going to cross stitch every 2 stitches in. And when you're near the end of that particular line of stitches, you want to see if you could get your last stitch in your first stitch when you had started cross stitching, so that way then it's complete. And this is going to be your leaf, so you're going to leave a little extra like you did in the beginning, so you could attach it to your pumpkin. So this is going to be your leaf that we're going to attach to the pumpkin. So this is one way of doing your leaf using cross stitch. The other is just knitting an I-cord, rather than knitting an I-cord with 2 to 3 stitches, and then knitting it for about, if you measure this, so you would knit it for about 3.5 inches. So you would knit an I-cord for 3.5 inches. So I am going to take my my leaf that I've created. I'm going to use the needle and make it go through the pumpkin and then knot it at the end. So I'm going to make it go through. I'm going to do it in an area that I want to kind of hide. So this is where there was extra yarn from the other two. So I'm going to just take it from here and make it just go through to the opposite side and bring it in. That's it. And I'm going to do the same for the other extra yarn that I have. So I've left extra yarn on both occasions. Like when I first started the leaf, I left a bit of extra yarn, and when I finished off, I left a bit of extra yarn so I could do this particular part. So I want to basically take it through and knot it around my stem, so that way then it stays locked into place. So as you can see, it's right here now, and I'm going to take this and just do a few knots and cut any extra yarn that I don't want. There you go. I'm going to cut this little bit. There we go. And this is my pumpkin. Now, if you want, what you could do is make this thicker. You would just, if you're doing an I-cord, you would increase the number of stitches to make that thicker. If you want to make this thinner, you would decrease the number of stitches. So I use 10. You could use 6 or so to make this a skinnier stem. And if you want to make this longer or shorter, again, it depends on your preference. You would knit less, or you would knit more. So it's up to you how you choose to go about doing that. But here is your pumpkin. If you like this video, don't forget to click that like button. And if you're new, welcome. Don't forget to click that subscribe button to get the latest videos on knitting projects, knitting ideas, knitting patterns, and much more. Relax, enjoy, and keep knitting.